We're looking today at Psalm 21, which I think, as I said in our last study, is a partner with Psalm 20. I think the commentators are right to see Psalm 20 as a prayer asking for God's victory in an upcoming military battle, and Psalm 21 is an expression of praise to God for granting victory in that battle situation. And I think, although the psalm could be applied in many situations in principle, I wonder, and I can't do more than that, I wonder whether the military situation in mind is the one recorded at the end of 2 Samuel 12, where we have an account of the capture of the city of Rabbah. Now, the reason I think this may well be the original setting for this psalm is because in Psalm 21, one of the blessings that God is thanked for is in verse 3, you set a crown of fine gold upon his head, upon the head of the king. And we're told in 2 Samuel 12 that David conquered Rabbah, and verse 30, he took the crown of their king from his head. The weight of it was a talent of gold, and in it was a precious stone, and it was placed on David's head. That seems too specific not to provide a very valid link here in Psalm 21. So here's the people of God as a community returning thanks to God because he's answered the prayers they prayed to him in Psalm 20. He would give victory to the king, who is God's representative, as he leads the people of God into battle against the enemies, who are not just the enemies of God's people, but thereby they are the enemies of God. And the opening verses of Psalm 21 is a list of reasons why they're thanking God for answered prayer. Just notice them very quickly with me. Verse 1, they're thanking God for victory that has been accomplished in God's strength. In verse 2, answered prayer, his heart's desires, and you've not withheld the request of his lips. There's a sense there in the language that it's not just that specific answer to prayer, but it's so many general answers to prayer. It's a way that God acts. He delights in answering the prayers of his people. In verse 3, it speaks about the blessings that come with the setting of the crown of gold. So everything that flows from having a godly king on the throne. Verse 4, there's the thankfulness for long life. He asked life of you and you gave it to him. A length of days forever and ever. Now that may simply be some sort of legitimate hyperbole and exaggeration, but in those days a long life was a sign of God's blessing. But I wonder too whether there's at least a hint here of the promised dynastic line of David. David's continuance as king is a mark of God's faithfulness, as promised that he will continue to have one of his descendants on the throne of Israel. In verse 5, the thanksgiving for the great glory and honor that David has been accorded as the king. And in verse 6 says the joy of God's presence. So all these things God has done for David and for the nation, and the reason for it all is attributed in verse 7 to the steadfast love, the chesed, the covenant love of God for his people. And then of course there's praise for past victories, but also praise for future victories. So verses 8 to 12, on the basis of God's faithfulness in this past situation, so the people are confident that God will continue to be with them and answer them and deliver them when they come into future conflict with their enemies. Wonderful psalm. And there are two things I just want to touch on very briefly in this short devotion. One is that how can we fail perhaps to see here something of not just David, but King David's greater son? Because all those answers to prayer that David and his people acknowledged could also be attributed to the Lord Jesus and the victories he won on our behalf when he died on the cross as our substitute and our redeemer. But here's the other very practical lesson. When we put these two psalms together, prayer and praise. My friends, we are so quick, are we not, to ask God to do things for us? Are we as quick, as ready to come back when God has intervened on our behalf, when God has provided for us, when God has answered our prayer, to come back to him and say, thank you. Thank you for your steadfast love toward us. May we be as ready and as full-throated in our praise as we are in the bringing of our petitions to our God. Join me next time as we look at the amazing Psalm 22. The Lord bless you.